50 years ago today, 250,000 Americans gathered at the Lincoln Memorial where Martin Luther King Jr. told the world, "I have a dream." This afternoon, President Obama marks the anniversary of the March on Washington with his own speech from the steps of the memorial. CBS Evening News anchor Scott Pelley is in Washington covering today's celebration on the National Mall, so we get to see him a little earlier than we normally do. Scott, it's great to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Gail. Great to be with you. It will be quite a celebration on the National Mall today. A little bit rainy and drizzly in Washington this morning, but by the time the festivities begin later this afternoon, things might clear up a little bit for everyone who's coming to mark this half-century occasion. Dr. Martin Luther King's great speech at the Lincoln Memorial. You know, a few days ago, we had an opportunity to visit with three people who were actually there that day. They include Marian Wright Edelman, who is the founder of the Children's Defense Fund, who was a young activist at the time. We spoke to Andrew Young, former mayor of Atlanta and also a former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. And we spoke to Julian Bond, who was a young activist on that day in the crowd singing "We Shall Overcome," and later went on to become a Georgia state legislator. Here's a little bit of what they had to say.
When the trains started unloading from the south and train load from Philadelphia, and then the movie stars flew in, then I realized that this was really something big.
You know, you don't have many opportunities in life to come together with folk to sort of say, here's who we are as a people, and here's who we want to be as a people, and here's what we can be as a people.
Let me tell you for a minute how frightened official Washington was of this march. This is from a book called The Bystander by Nick Bryant. All elective surgery in Washington was canceled, freeing up 350 beds for riot-related emergencies. In the event of a riot, a policeman or National Guardsman would be stationed on every street corner in downtown Washington. They deployed 200 scout cars, 86 motorcycles, 20 jeeps, several police helicopters, 23 cranes to move broken down or disabled buses. 350 inmates were evacuated from jail in the district to make space for disruptive protesters. And the administration stations an official just to the right of the Lincoln Memorial with a cutoff switch and a record turntable. If militant protesters overran the speaker platform, the sound feed to the loudspeakers would be cut off and replaced by a recording of Mahalia Jackson singing "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands."
And instead of a riot, you had what?
You had absolute peace. I think 2 people were arrested that day.
And so, the celebration will begin later this morning, will continue throughout much of the afternoon. President Obama will speak at the Lincoln Memorial a little bit after 2:45 Eastern Time, and then a bell will be rung at 3 o'clock, the time that Martin Luther King gave his historic address. The bell, Gail, is so important in this case. It is the bell from the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, where 2 weeks after King's speech, the Ku Klux Klan laid a bomb at the church, killing 4 African-American girls, ages 11 and 14. That was one of the seminal events in the civil rights movement that propelled the country toward the Civil Rights Act of 1964. All of that being commemorated here today, a symbolic victory over racism. Gail?
And I'm hearing from very reliable sources that Oprah Winfrey will be involved in the ringing of that bell, Scott Pelley. But what can you tell us what we can expect from the president's speech tonight? What are you hearing?
Well, you know, he was on the Tom Joyner radio show yesterday, and he said, the first thing I want you to know about my speech is it's not going to be as good. He said that Martin Luther King's speech was one of the top 5 American political speeches of all time. I think what the president's going to say today is that enormous progress has been made against racism, particularly with regard to justice and access to voting. But the president will also say that not nearly enough progress has been made in the economic realm. The March on Washington was called the March for Jobs and Equality, and the president's going to say 50 years later we haven't done enough on jobs. Interesting fact we looked up, the Evening News Research Department was telling us that about 3 times more African Americans are living in poverty than white Americans, and that's the same proportion that existed 50 years ago today.
Wow, more work to do. Thank you, Scott Pelley.